All right, it's time to model some floors. We're going to model a slab on grade floor. Well, what is that? That is a type of floor system that they pour concrete over a sandwich layers of sand and gravel. And it's pretty much common in all residential projects like homes, individual homes. But when you get into larger commercial projects, you'll start working with different kind of foundation systems. And they'll use a slab on grade to see what the cost is. They can determine cost. So today we're gonna we're gonna model a slab on grade system, and before we model, we're gonna get into our habits of analyzing our floor plan. So I'm in my level one. I'm active in this view, and I'm gonna maximize this view by going to my view tab and hitting tab windows. So now let's zoom in here. As a general rule of thumb, every time there is a change in elevation in your floor, so think of someone walking through this building. Remember, you are a translator, right? Walking through this building, and think about where people will be stepping up to a new surface or stepping down to a new surface, all right? So if we're in this kitchen area, kitchen dining room area, and you want to go to the living room, well, what does that look like for you as you're walking through it? Well, I'm going through this corridor. There is a line here. Okay, that could be a step or that could be a change in finish. Okay, so we just take note of that. And as we keep walking, we turn the corner, come down, there's some stairs that go up to the next floor. That's what these hidden lines represent, that these stairs continue up. But as we approach the family room, we see a down arrow and a couple of stairs. So that is a deliberate change in elevation. So right here, we have at least 2 floors that we need to model, 2 separate sketches. Use the change in elevations as your guide as to how many different floors do I need to model at this level, okay? But now let's go back to this line up here that we didn't know what it represented. If you don't know what it represents, look at the doors. Because as we look at these doors here over in the kitchen area, we see that there's no line there at this kitchen. This can be, as you open these double doors, there is no line there to tell you that there's a change or a step. So you're like, okay, there's no step here. So this floor is flat. And up here, there's no change here. So this floor is also flat here. So if we assume that this line represents a change in elevation, now we're talking about 3 floors to model. We have one over here, the kitchen and dining. We have another floor, because you're stepping up, if that's what that line represents, which can be, this is all flat up to the stairs, flat through these bathroom doors. And then the third one, will you step down all the way through. So what we're going to assume, just for the sake of training, we're going to assume that this is 2 separate floors, that all of this is flat up here, and that line represents a change in finish, okay? So let's model. Structure tab, your floor drop-down menu, and look for floor structural. And I've been harping about workflows. You can't be efficient in Revit unless you have a workflow set. Well, what is the default tool over here in the draw panel, where my mouse is? You see the default tool that comes up whenever you create a floor? If I hover over there, Revit says pick walls. So now you can see the importance of having some structural walls modeled before you create a floor. The beauty of that is I pick this wall right here, this concrete wall right there, is that there's this little toggle, right? And Revit is basically communicating back with you. Do you want the edge of this floor to go to the outside, or do you want it to go to the inside? Well, we think about phases, okay? On a slab on grade project, where this is the foundation system that is used, slab on grade is the last thing to be poured. So now we translate that workflow into Revit. That wall will already be in place. It'll already be poured and shot. Remember, we're shotcrete. It will already be there by the time this floor gets poured. So when we go to pour this floor, it needs to go to the inside. It needs to wrap around that wall. Okay, so I'm being very literal in my selection. Right? But the beauty of picking walls is that later on, if this design changes and the architect wants to make this corridor a little bit larger, once you start moving that wall, your floor edge will move with it. So it's also good things to know and the behaviors that Revit gives you. All right. So now what we are going to do is we've already picked our walls, and actually we can pick this one down here. We need to pick this wall right here, and we'll pick the inside face of that wall like that. Okay. So we got those 3 interior walls chosen, but now let's choose this exterior wall right there. Okay. So we're telling Revit we want these edges to follow the wall if that wall moves. That's what we're communicating back to Revit. Now let's pick the rest of our floor sketch. So now go ahead here and hit pick lines. And because we have a CAD background here, we can now pick existing edges or existing lines. So let's zoom in here and let me just pick, this outside edge or outside line, and go ahead and do that on the left and the bottom. Okay. And now, as we work around this wall, let's pick that face of the wall and this face of the wall, and let's keep selecting lines that represent the edge of our floor. Okay. All right. Now, when you get to the stairs, you have to figure out where this floor up here will stop and begin stepping down. So we'll just choose this first line right there. After you have all of your lines selected, let's go ahead and use our trim command to start trimming this, start closing this loop. So let's modify tab, let's hit trim, and I'll begin working at this wall. So you pick the edges, you pick the lines that you want to keep. So I'll pick this side of the line and that one. You see what happens there with that hidden line? If I would have picked this side of the line, it would get rid of that, but we don't want that, right? We want to keep that edge. So let's trim and work your way around and start trimming. Alright, so we are almost done with our loop, but we have to make sure that this line is going to line up with that line. You see, because we have a wall on one side, but we have windows on the other. So we need to draw a line here to represent this notch. So let me go pick lines. You can also use pick walls here to pick the outside of that wall like that. Okay, that's also an option. And then I'll use my trim command, TR, to trim this together. All right, so we got the edges of our floors. So that's done. But before we hit finish, we have to look at some properties. Okay, be patient with this process. So let's go to properties. And you can see the name of the floor is not what we need. That lightweight concrete over 2-inch metal deck, that's meant for elevated floor systems. So let's click on here and see what we have available. We have 6-inch concrete. So let's go ahead and hit 6-inch concrete and hit edit type. And now I'm going to rename this. So let's hit slab on grade. And now I'll say 5 inches. Just like our walls have specific naming, so do our floors. This is communicating something, that this is not only a type of floor, but you're also conveying when this floor gets poured. So take your naming very importantly. So let's hit OK. And let's edit the structure to 5 inches and hit OK. We're going to leave the materials alone for now, and we'll hit OK. And now we can say, finish the sketch. So we have a floor system in here. All right. Now let's go to my 3D view. And let's take a look at our floor. So there it is, looking all pretty. Now what we want to do is we want to take some of these walls and push them down into the ground. All right. So I'm going to select these 4 walls and the exterior walls like that. And in my base offset, I'll say -1 foot and hit OK. When I did that, you can see that this wall, it just kind of went into the floor and nothing really happened, right? So they're just kind of bleeding into each other right now. See that? So what we're going to do is we're going to use a tool called join geometry. So select your floor and select your walls that share that floor and isolate element, which is down here in your glasses, and let's hit isolate element. Now let's join that geometry. Let's go to our modify tab. Under the geometry panel, hit the join button, and let's select the wall first and the floor second. Okay, let's hit escape. Now, if we see what Revit is doing, what Revit considers important, when we used our join geometry, it automatically assumed that that floor was more important than that wall. You now need to communicate back to Revit which element is truly most important. Right now the floor is slicing through that wall right there, but we know, based on construction practice, that this wall will be there first, so this join needs to switch. So let's go ahead and go back to our join drop-down menu, join drop-down, and hit switch join order. And now select the wall and the floor again. I'm going to escape twice because you can see in my cursor I still have a little tool there, so let's escape twice. And now let's hover over the wall. You can see that the wall is now slicing through the floor. That's super important to understand what the floors and walls are doing, because that little change that we just did, we are actually changing data now. Because if I have this wall selected and over here in the properties, I scroll down to my dimensions. You see these numbers? Volume and area, it's reporting a value for you. Just as an example, the volume right now is 168.92, correct? So now in Revit, I'm going to do an undo, Control Z. And now you can see that my floor is slicing through my wall again. If I select my wall and go back to my numbers, I got 165.46. You see how the numbers changed? So it's very important that as you think about construction and how something is actually going to go together, it makes you're communicating in Revit, and Revit's communicating back, letting you know, okay, well, these are the numbers that I came up with. You don't have to worry about the numbers. You just worry about the construction.